It's been a while since you've done one of these, so let me try and do my best Jared impersonation in this week's Ship Shape. Oh no, I messed it. Let's. No. We have to write it down because it's not a normal thing. Oh yeah. Let's take a look right now at some of the ships making their way through the pipeline in this week's Ship Shape. Starting with the ship that is the earliest in the pipeline, which is the Drake Vulture. This is just moving towards the end of white box, early grey box phase. We have done our initial white box art and design review phase, so we are now cracking on fleshing out the interior of the ship to a higher standard. It's pretty true to the original concept. It still has the split deck, it has the dual entry methods into the pilot seat from the rear section. And from this side externally, we've still got the ladder on the side so you can climb up. It's a really sketchy, classic Drake entrance method. You'll see the Vulture come online next year sometime, and alongside it you'll see the very first version of a ship-based salvage. Moving to the next ship is the Ares Starfighter, Inferno and Ion. These are towards the end of grey box, crossing into final art in places, so these are your two single player anti-capital heavy fighters. The only sort of unknowns that cropped up was where and how we access the components on the ship. These were blocked in at concept phase, but obviously things change during development. We learn a bit more about how to do things more optimally in the engine each ship we do. We've adjusted the animation template to get in a little. It was using another ship's entry, and then just trying to frame the huge guns at the side of the cockpit in view in a way that is nice, but without interfering with your view massively by having huge amounts of VFX and barrel obscuring half your view. In terms of the gold standard ships, the Gladius hit its gold standard, and we actually got the vast majority of that into 3.14 with only some minor bug fixes in 3.15. The Sabre comes online to its gold standard in 3.15, and some of that new stuff we're working on you might hear about on October 9th at Digital Citizen Con. And finally reaching the ship that is furthest along in the pipeline, which is the Aegis Redeemer, which is pretty much at the end of final art and into the release prep phase, which is what we call the final phase. This is taking the final asset and making it game release ready, so there's a lot of downstream tech and VFX audio UI support that goes on top of that pristine final art state. Silhouette wise, it still has those famous nutcracker wings. We hardened up some of the smooth edges, so there's a bit more angular folds in it. We changed the tail and sort of just stretched the body to balance the proportions because it was a bit one-sided in terms of weight distribution. Originally it was a 3-person dropship gunship hybrid and featured in Squadron 42 in sort of a very minor dropship role. But over time, the needs for that dropship in Squadron evolved, and it wasn't suitable for that anymore, so we had the Vanguard Hoplite take its place, and then ultimately the Valkyrie. We looked at the stats of the weapons at the time versus the ships that were there, and they all got upgraded, upsized, moved around, so now it is a 4-person gunship, and being a 4-person gunship required some quite beefy components, so it was trying to fit all these things on this chassis, keeping its sort of quite iconic look. Fitting it all inside was by far the biggest challenge of the production. We think we've been quite faithful to that original design, both visually and gameplay wise, and we look forward to people playing it later in the year.
While these ships are still currently in development, you can take to the internet now and vote for your favorite already flyable ships in this year's Ship Showdown, where I hear there's a rather subversive push out there for the Argo Cargo. Fight the power, people. But now, since our next 2 episodes are entirely dedicated to new healing and inventory mechanics that are likely to lead to perhaps the biggest change in Persistent Universe gameplay since 3.0, we're going to go ahead and move our next sprint report up a bit. Let's see what folks are working on. Let's start things off with a couple new weapon concepts, because we haven't had those in a while, and take a look at 3 new electron damage items from manufacturer Volt. First up, we've got an Electron SMG. Now, during review, folks were pretty happy with this one, so expect it to move forward rather quickly. There's also an Electron LMG that, well, we felt still needed a little work. Maybe some shape tweaks, and maybe another pass on the battery pack. And finally, a laser sniper rifle, still from Volt, but not electron damage based. They're fine looking weapons and expected to go into production soon, because we can never have too many ways to make pew pew in the Persistent Universe. The EUPU feature team is making solid progress on laser trip mines designed to make the exploration of derelicts a lot more interesting in the near future. There's a variety of use cases, from protecting cargo left behind that needs to be retrieved later, to trapping someone in a location, to just... well, the trolling possibilities are nearly endless. And yes, Virginia, it's true, they won't just be for level designers and NPCs. Laser trip mines will eventually make their way into player hands, and when that happens, will anywhere be truly safe? Coming to Orison in Alpha 3.15 are 3 new locations we'll be exploring later this quarter, but before that happens, we can share these early white box images of Cousin Crows, the ship and vehicle customization shop that is actually tucked into the underbelly of the floating platforms that make up our newest landing zone. Now, Cousin Crows will support a wide variety of ship customization options, including components, room modules, paints, and more. Now, while everything that can be won't be immediately available in Alpha 3.15, it will continue to expand in its services across subsequent patches. Also moving through Whitebox is the Crusader showroom, the concepts of which we showed you earlier this quarter. Now, one of the biggest challenges for the showroom here is going to be the lighting, since so much of this is open and exposed to the world outside. Beyond that, the team is also experimenting with cutaway displays of the Mother of Bombs, as well as potentially the cockpit of the Hercules itself. Now, progress on the showroom is proceeding as scheduled, and we expect to explore the close to finished versions of these new Orison areas later this quarter. Folks who saw our recent Star Citizen Live with the lighting team know that work has been underway on adding new auxiliary lighting states to the various habitation modules throughout the Stanton system. And here we can see the current progress of that work, including Area 18, Grimhex, Lorville, Microtech, Olisar, Orison, Fleischer Prison, rest stops, and even Levski. Come back to us, Levski. And speaking of lights, the graphics team has recently begun work on a new glass window shader designed for buildings that will bring them to life like never before. Now this is one of those where I don't need to explain what's happening, you can see for yourself. You know, oftentimes the coolest things in game dev are the ones that just make sense, the ones that just make the world seem like the world should be. And that's definitely what we're looking at here. The UI tech team has been working on a new 3D skeleton and interface to be used by players when they wake up in the hospital, allowing them to properly identify and treat their own wounds as needed. Wow, and I thought the self-service lines in the grocery store were something. That's healthcare in the 30th century for you. Now there will be different rigs for male and female players, and eventually a similar skeletal overlay will be available to players out in the field when they use their hand scanners. But for now, hospitals only. This is just a first look, but you can expect to see the entire loop explored here on ISC starting next week. And since Alpha 3.15 is introducing healing, medical, and the next iteration of inventory, we're talking the next major step forward towards what we've been calling Death of a Spaceman. And while we'll be learning all about those over the next 2 weeks, the character team has started concepts for the long-awaited cybernetic limb replacements coming in later iterations. And while the team has some favorites here, explorations are going to continue beyond what you're seeing, as we want a varied array of options for beginners, more advanced options, different sources like government issue or pirate outlander, and more. I mean, look at all these. Does that one only have 3 fingers? They're also exploring how they work with a variety of clothing options in the verse, either exposing the full or partial arm. And then, of course, the gammy leg. Now these are still in the concept stage, so it'll be a while yet before they make their way into the persistent universe. But I'll tell you, I'm excited to one day be more machine now than man. Let's go. So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that crowd favorites like the Redeemer, Aegis Starfighter, and Vulture are making their way through the pipeline, and that if those are the ones that we can tell you about now, just wait for CitizenCon and IAE. That Origin still has a few more tricks left up its sleeve in the upcoming Alpha 3.15. And that with cybernetics on the way, we're another step closer to robot high fives for everyone. And don't forget to vote in Ship Showdown Phase 1. All the details are available now on the robertspaceindustries.com website. And be sure you keep October 9th open for Digital CitizenCon and the variety of activities that go along with that. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckaby. We'll see you all next week.